Well, good morning, everybody. I'm Don Stewart, and welcome to another edition of Breaking News. Today is Thursday, the 8th day of October, 2024. And like we say here every day, the broken record, important stories come across the wire every single day that show that the Bible is 1000% correct in what it says the world will be like at the time of the end of the age, before the second coming of Jesus Christ, and the many events predicted that will precede it. And we're here to tell you about what's taking place, how it's all fitting in. And hopefully, we're amazed every day. I am never surprised, but always amazed by what God is doing. So, we have, again, three major important stories today, at least, that we'll get to right now. Okay, first of all, the far left anti Israel New York Times typically says Israel's not expected to launch an attack against Iran's nuclear facilities, but rather to focus on bases and intelligence sites. They always try to pour cold water on everything Israel is doing. All right, Israel's still getting it bad from Hezbollah. Over 100 missiles were launched from Lebanon towards the Haifa area today. U.S. officials say finally they're getting the idea that Washington is no longer pushing an Israel-Hezbollah ceasefire. Good thinking, Washington. Now, there's a real interesting story. The West diplomacy will fail because it has no substance to back it up. That's what we've been saying for years, and many other people have been saying for years. Unless there's some power, some military might to back it up, there's no way these people are going to listen to diplomacy, ceasefire, etc. And then in a very important story we have, our most important of all the ones, we'll get to it in a bit, how Putin benefits from Iran and Hezbollah's attacks on Israel. Because at the end of the day, as we keep mentioning, it's going to be Russia, not Iran, that's going to lead a last days coalition against Israel. And as we see, it's going to segue from Iran being the big, leader in this area in the Middle East to Russia taking over and doing it. And finally, the latest on Hurricane Milton, the Tampa Bay mayor said, if you stay, you will die. The storm surges are supposedly anywhere from 10 to 15 feet. This is how bad it is. Unsurvivable. And so this is what's coming. And like I'm sure many of you are watching the news on this, the Weather Channel and the such like probably Wednesday or Thursday, Wednesday night, early Thursday morning. It's coming soon, this landfall. And it's going to be devastating wherever it hits. And so we'll keep an eye on that. All right, let's get to the headlines. First headline, this is from the New York Times. I almost didn't do this story, but I just want to do it to show that you've always got the negativity during this time, that Israel continues to get bombarded by the world's press, by countries that tell them not to do, what they should be doing. Here's the headline. Israel not expected to attack Iran's nuclear facilities, but to focus on bases, intelligence sites. This is from the far left anti-Semitic New York Times. Biden and other U.S. officials said that strikes on nuclear facilities would be ineffective and plunge the region into a full-scale war. Oh, Joe Biden says so. That must be the end of it, right? Now, the war with Iran would lead to Israel's destruction, or does Israel have no choice but to attack? Again, Israel's destruction they're talking about. It's not going to happen, as we know. Israel's response to Iran's missile barrage attack at the beginning of October will not be attacking its nuclear facilities, will be attacking Iran's nuclear facilities, but rather targeting the Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps' military bases, intelligence sites, according to a Monday report from the far left racist, anti-Semitic New York Times, citing certain officials. You can always find certain officials that tell you anything you want to hear. Reports as well, Israel would prefer to have U.S. backing in its response. A lame duck President Joe Biden and other U.S. officials have said the strikes on nuclear facilities would be ineffective and plunge the region into a full-scale war. What do you think's going on right now, guys? Report said. However, the nuclear facilities as targets may come into consideration should Iran escalate with attacks on their own. It's interesting. This line here got a lot of comments from the story. They said, should they escalate the attacks? They've had two major attacks already against Israel. 200 ballistic missiles, almost the last one, 300 some odd the previous one. And so it's incredible what these people say. Anyway, the leftist Times also reported Pentagon officials wondering whether Israel, now see, here they go, they don't know, wondering whether Israel is preparing a retaliatory response against Iran alone. And that's Israel's business. It's not the business of the United States, but they get really heartbroken and hurt. And that's what we keep hearing, that when Israel does respond, it hurts the feelings of Lloyd Austin, the defense secretary, Anthony Blinken, Biden, and others. You didn't tell us you were going to do this. Well, of course not, because they need the element of surprise. Report also cited former and current senior Israeli officials who acknowledged doubts about whether Israel can actually cause damage to Iran's nuclear facilities. Yeah, there are a number of leftists in Israel too, that the naysayers that are still there. Now you got warnings of escalation is next heading here. U.S. lame duck President Joe Biden has initially warned Israel after the Iranian strike earlier this month that the Jewish state's response should be proportionate. U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin told his Israeli counterpart that Israel should avoid any steps that would result in Iran escalating tensions. Escalating tension. Okay. Over the years, Iran has increased its production of uranium that would allow it to build a bomb, according to estimates. The Times also reported a rising call in Israel, where the country has the opportunity to set back Iranian capability in the region by a few years. Former U.S. President Donald Trump said in a speech that Israel should hit the nuclear first and worry about the rest later. It also mentioned should tensions escalate between the two countries, one likely target for Israel's response would be Iran's Natanz nuclear enrichment plant, and reported that Israel has already developed plans on how to cripple the giant centrifuge hull. The Times said that the enrichment plant has been the focus of Israel's and the U.S.'s attention for around the last 22 years. Okay, so here's the bottom line. Nobody knows what Israel's going to do. The leftist New York Times continues and tries to discourage Israel from defending itself. They grudgingly admit that they don't know what Israel will do. Not surprising, we see the anti-Israel stories like this. There are a number of stories that I did not do that I was going to get to, but we had so many other things in the way. Basically, the New York Times was crying crocodile tears over the death of Nasrallah, the leader of Hezbollah. Some of the way they described him like he's some great leader and some freedom fighter, and that it's just terrible how anti-Semitic these people are. They always have been. And this is not something new, but again, this is to get people discouraged about what's going to go on. Now, again, we're not discouraged here. We don't know what's going to happen, but we do know how it's all going to end. And we continue to say this here on our program, Breaking News, and our website, Educating Our World, our app, EOW, with Don Stewart, Educating Our World with Don Stewart, in both app stores. Again, everything is free, all the resources we have. And we do this every day to encourage you. And that's why we're back here every day, because we know how the battle's going to end, the war's going to end. We have read the last chapter of the book. We've seen the last act of the play. We've watched the last scene of the movie, however you want to put it. And Jesus Christ comes back. He sets up his kingdom. His people are with him. And this earth is turned into something what it's supposed to have been in the beginning. And so anyway, that's why we're moving towards. But again, in the meantime, it's not going to be easy. And so we will give you the latest and tell it like it is. All right. Headline number two, this shows the problem here. Over 100 missiles have been launched from Lebanon towards Haifa area. They've had sirens in Haifa, Akko, and nearby areas after Hezbollah launches dozens of rockets from Lebanon towards northern Israel. 100 missiles were launched in two consecutive barrages. So the residents of Haifa have heard many explosions. They've hit the air raid shelters. Some of the rockets fell into the sea. 5 separate areas around Haifa were hit. Now, as we've continually warned, fighting Hezbollah will not be as simple as it was against the war against Hamas, and that hadn't been simple at all. It will be a long, sustained campaign, but it must be done. Hezbollah has been, putting together weapons since 2006 in these tunnels. In fact, there's the story that, again, so many to get to, we never got around to. Actually, Hezbollah had 3,000 fighters ready on October 8th, the day after October 7th, to invade Israel from the north, Israel's north, Lebanon south, but they didn't. And the preparations are there. They've gone into about 100 different of these tunnels and found the weaponry and all the information which gives the plan that was going to happen, which did, unfortunately. And so they're armed to the teeth. So it's going to take a while. It's not going to be easy, but it has to be done. And we know something will be done because we know from Scripture. Again, we've seen the movie, right? We know that at the time of the end, there will be peace on the northern front of Israel, and that will be why the Russia-led invasion will be able to take place, because they're not expecting it, because they thought this area had been taken care of. Anyway, we'll move on to headline number three. I love this one. Washington officials say they're no longer pushing an Israeli Hezbollah ceasefire. No 21-day ceasefire like Macron and Biden wanted. That's good. U.S. officials tell CNN the U.S. is no longer pushing to revive its proposed deal for a ceasefire between Israel and Lebanon. They're focused on shaping, here we go, and limiting Israeli operations in Lebanon and against Iran. Keep getting these stories. Well, it's a limited invasion. It's a limited fight by Israel. Okay, so these fools are realizing that Israel is going to fight for its own survival, while their only response, and this is the West, diplomacy, appease, give up, which leads us to our next headline. This is an interesting story. If we had more time, we could develop it. And we've talked about this in the past. Headline 4: The West diplomacy will fail because it has no substance. You may want to read this. This is on Ynet News, one of the Israeli sites. It's an opinion piece. And here, this first paragraph says it all. Discussions of the Middle East and the West focus on supposed solutions: a diplomatic solution, a political solution, the two-state solution. Western diplomacy cannot succeed because there is no substance, no willingness to use force behind the talk. And that's just it. They won't use any military force. And so they get played all the time by these Muslim, countries that, nod their head, give them a wink and a nod, but thinking these people in the West are stupid because they only understand force. That's all they ever understand. That's why what Israel's doing right now is getting their attention. Now, headline number 5 is our most important of all of the stories today, and we'll explain why. This is how Putin benefits from Iran and Hezbollah's attacks on Israel. Russia's alliance with Tehran grows stronger than ever. It's interesting, as it distances itself from Israel, accusing it of killing Lebanese citizens and siding with Hezbollah against Israel's ground offensive. In return, Moscow was poised to receive drones and ballistic missiles. This is from Iran. In the past weeks, the Kremlin, seemingly unencumbered by facts, has shifted blame for the war in Lebanon to Israel, ignoring Hezbollah's year-long assault on Israel's northern communities. Moscow overlooked Iran's ballistic missile strike on Israel on October 1st, choosing instead to condemn Israel for the assassination of Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah, blaming it for the expected escalation and accusing it of murdering Lebanese civilians. Russia made no mention of Hezbollah's attack on October 8th last year, which led to thousands of rockets and missiles being fired at Israeli citizens near the border, internally displacing tens of thousands of residents in northern Israel. Russia, which does not view Hezbollah as a terrorist group, regularly engages with its leaders, including Nasrallah up until his death. Last week, Russian Deputy Foreign Minister Mikhail Bogdanov criticized Israel's ground operations in southern Lebanon during a meeting with Lebanese ambassador in Moscow, underscoring the Kremlin's opposition to Israeli actions, which they termed as political assassinations. Just before Iran's missile attack, Russian Prime Minister Mikhail Mishustin visited Tehran, underscoring this is key, the growing strategic partnership between Moscow and Tehran amidst the war in Ukraine and tensions between Israel, Hezbollah, and Iran. The visit included a face-to-face visit with Iranian President Pezeshkian. It highlighted the increased frequency of high-level Russian visits to Iran, aiming to bolster security ties significantly. Putin agreed to a strategic partnership with Tehran. Okay, here's our comment. This by far is the most significant of our stories as far as last days Bible prophecy is concerned. As Iran continues to show it cannot hold together a coalition that would destroy Israel, we will find Russia more and more filling the gap. It's going to take time, but it will take place. Now, again, whatever the final outcome of Israel's attack on Iran, it will weaken the regime to the place where it cannot sustain holding its various surrogates together. Hamas is a lost cause now for them. Hezbollah will eventually be neutralized to a large degree. You've got the terrorists in both Syria and Iraq that are, secondary. They can't give much of a problem. The Houthis, again, down in Yemen have been bombarded by the U.S. too, apart from Israel. So Iran, and trying to put together this coalition to destroy Israel, it's just not working. It's not going to work. They're two great bombing attacks. They praised themselves of being so wonderful. Basically did nothing. No one was killed in either of these attacks, and very little damage done. And so that's why we're going to segue. We're going to see that moving to Russia taking the lead. And again, Iran will be a surrogate to Russia because Russia will have the power to put together a coalition, a real coalition that Iran has not been able to do, which will include also Turkey, Iran, and some of the other countries. And so for documentation on this, please check out our book, 25 Signs We're Near the End. It's on our website, Educating Our World, under the heading of Bible Prophecy. And again, every book is free, every download is free, but it goes into great detail, signs 9 through 11, about this coming invasion, what it is and what it isn't. And Appendix number 5 basically makes it clear that what's going on now is some type of regional war. Is not something predicted in scripture. So don't get all excited like so many people have said. This is it. This is Ezekiel 38, 39 invasion. No, it's not. It's coming, but there's other things that have to fall into place. So anyway, you need to check all that out. And finally, headline number 5, the Tampa mayor says it very simply. She said, if you stay, you will die. Jane Castor said, I can say without any dramatization whatsoever, if you choose to stay in one of those evacuation areas, you are going to die. Brace for impact. Floridians warned Hurricane Milton ready to explode. This is a Breitbart headline. And like I said, I'm sure many of you are watching this story. It's closing in on Florida's west coast with landfall expected as a Cat 3 hurricane Wednesday night or early Thursday morning as a mass exodus continues. The extreme weather event will arrive as Floridians still work to recover from the devastation unleashed by Hurricane Helene's impact some 12 days ago. And so we've got that going up. So we've got 3 major stories. So many major events are about to happen. Israel's response, the hurricane that's about to hit Florida, and of course, the elections that are going to take place 4 weeks from today. Now, this is why we put our hope in the God of the Bible and Him alone. Scripture has been written for many purposes, but one of them is to encourage you and I that all will be well in the end. It tells the truth about what's going to happen. It's going to be a difficult world, but at the end of the day, we win because we're in Jesus Christ, and that's all we really need to know. So let's concentrate on that and be of good cheer and be positive because even with all this going on, we know that at the end of the day, the Lord is with us. He's going to watch us and He's going to get us all to the finish line. All right, I'm Don Stewart. Thank you so much for watching. We'll be back later with another edition of Breaking News, Lord willing. Until then, as always, may the Lord richly, richly bless.